Yes. Okay.
There we are. So, welcome back, everyone, to episode 5 of What is Reality? Hi, Bill. How are you today?
Terrific. And yourself?
Amazing. I always look forward to our conversations. You can probably tell I'm super energized and excited about our topic for today. So, lovely to be back speaking with you. And for listeners, obviously, we've this is number 5 out of I don't know how many we're going to do. Yeah, today, and as you know, I kind of in between these recordings, it almost is like I get called into like, okay, like what is the topic and what is the thing that we should discuss today? And the thing that's top of my mind for today is around the power of synchronicity. And just to give a little context around this, so it was a couple of weeks ago. I was at a beach in Devon, which is miles away from where I know anybody, and I happened to bump into somebody. Like I bumped into a friend there on a beach. It was miles away. I hadn't seen her in 3 years, and the last time we were together, we were actually in that same town. And I just was like, what are the chances of this, right? I mean, it was crazy. So anyway, since then, it's really got me thinking about the power of synchronicity and the signs that are everywhere. And I know that's something you and I share in terms of we pick up on those signs, signals, and synchronicities that are happening all around us. So I guess I wanted to open up today by asking you, Bill, what synchronicity means to you.
Well, if it only happened once in a while, it would be something that everyone would agree is just coincidence. Isn't it amusing? But the fact that it happens so frequently, and if you're attuned to it, you notice it more. Sometimes, if you're not attuned to it, there are synchronicities going on, and you don't quite get it that it's happening.
Mhm.
But what it means to me is that the universe is there, and it's with us. It's conscious, and it's always with us, and it's signaling us.
Mhm.
It's carrying out a conversation, kind of mute conversation with us, but it isn't necessarily mute because it could speak through other voices, like music in the background. The lyrics
Mhm.
just happen to coincide with what you just thought about.
Mhm.
Like I'm in the car driving to the city, and I realize I'm not in my best mood. And just as I think that, the song "Smile," uh, the song "To Smile," and the world will smile with you, and so on. Um, that's a simple example, but um, I experience it several times a day, and it wasn't always that way. I remember when I was younger, I wasn't that attuned to it, and it wasn't happening so constantly. Now it's always meaningful. I catch it pretty much all the time. Whenever it happens quite frequently, and then there's a message in it, and the message is something I needed to know at that moment. So may not be a method that everyone is ready to use. On the other hand, it may be a method that everyone is ready to use. I think there's a good and a bad to everything. It's how you take it. You can take practically anything and experience it as a good thing or a bad thing. Um, there's been this loosening of people's grip on reality, and they're willing to. It's not willing to. It's like they're caused to believe that anything is possible, and we see negative examples of the effect of that in people believing bad, lying political comments and hate talk and stuff like that. And people are willing to believe that weird conspiracies can happen with aliens, consorting with the other political party and stuff like that. But the upside of it is that people's minds are more open to believe, or at least to keep their minds open to the possibility of anything. And that's much better than having a closed mind. So synchronicities might be something that the time has come for mass synchronicity to be possible. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've said there that you experience it through, sometimes it's through music, and it's a message that you need to hear. I know for me, definitely like in coaching sessions when I'm coaching, clients, the message is always in there for me. Sometimes it's a sign when you're driving down the side of the road. It's almost like a billboard speaks to you. And yeah, music and people as well, right? I think you've probably heard this and thought this as well, but it's when somebody goes, oh, I was just thinking of you when you phone them, right? And I think synchronicity and kind of telepathy are kind of linked as well. And I think once you have an awareness of that, it's quite difficult. I always say I don't believe in coincidences, right? And I think once you're, like you say, attuned to it, I almost laugh like because it's just the signs are so obvious, right? But then yeah, I guess for people that can't see kind of synchronicities or maybe aren't tuned in, where do they start? What do they need to do in order to kind of open their minds to be able to see this?
Well, there's a couple of different methods. One is noticing what you notice. In other words, you might find yourself looking in a certain direction. You don't know why. It's just like instinctual. And in fact, there's something out the window. And then whatever it might be, a deer or a butterfly or whatever it is. Why did you notice it? Well, maybe it was just because it was moving. On the other hand, maybe there's a message in it. And so if you notice what you notice, it's a good beginning. It's a good method, down to earth method. Why did I notice that? That's only one of many, but I think if we boil down our messages on this show to methods that are simple, that'll stick in people's minds, and every now and then they'll notice something, and then they'll remember, oh yeah, noticing something. Why did I notice that? Oh, it's because they expect me to say something. I have a feeling they expect me to say, what are they expecting me to say? Oh, that's right. They have a big birthday coming up and I didn't remember it. Whatever it might be, just to be open to the thread that I noticed something, it might have more meaning. Let's just check into it. What am I picking up?
Yeah, so you've noticed it, but asking yourself, why have I noticed that? Because a lot of us kind of go through life a bit on autopilot, and I actually have been talking about this quite a lot recently, because people ask you about like entrepreneurship and what's the difference, and in terms of the mindset shift, and I compare it a lot to this like red car theory. You might have heard about this, and it's if somebody asked you this morning like, how many red cars did you see on your way to work, you perhaps wouldn't know, but when you're leaving work you'd be looking for them, right? And then, oh, I saw 10 cars, right? And for me, it's kind of similar to, when people have asked me about entrepreneurship and what's different, it's like the opportunities were always there. I just wasn't necessarily looking for them. Whereas now, with a new lens, they're everywhere, right? Opportunities are everywhere. And I think that relates quite closely to like synchronicities as well. It's like almost when you're looking for them, they are everywhere, but it's almost a perspective shift in order to look at the world through that lens.
It definitely is. And it's because of that autopilot, nothing's simple about the universe. It's complex and in its beauty. It's exquisitely ornate with all kinds of unexpected surprises. So it's never like black and white. Um, Sometimes the autopilot is a good, useful thing. Like flow state is the best example of good autopilot. You're on autopilot doing something that you love and that it's played to you, so you're not attached to the outcome of it, and it's coming out perfectly, and that gives you satisfaction and makes you feel good, and the whole thing is just joy. But then there's the other autopilot, which causes us to not notice what we notice and to be very unobservant in general, because we're essentially being propelled around by our needy sense of incompleteness and trying to become complete just by doing what society has taught us to imitate. So we're hiding in the herd, we're plummeting along at top speed, trying to keep up with the speed of life, and we're not enjoying it. And we're constantly concerned, worried, or trying to put up a good front, but really miserable inside. And all of that autopilot is totally no good. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do the world any good. It doesn't do you any good. You don't need that autopilot. So discriminating between the good autopilot and the bad autopilot isn't something you can do if you're on the bad autopilot. So washing one's mind clean of everything is a good way to start. Just to say, wait a second, how am I feeling right now? Lousy. Okay, so what's lousy? Well, when I watch that What is Reality show, Bill and Natalie are always telling me that it's a misunderstanding. If I feel lousy, it's a misunderstanding. Now, I don't remember what they said, but I remember I believed it at the time. So this must be a misunderstanding. And even if I don't remember why it's a misunderstanding, I accept that it's a misunderstanding. So I'm not going to take that seriously anymore. I'm not miserable. I'm not sad. I'm just ready for my next moment. I'm open. I'm not positive. I'm not negative. I'm neutral. I feel better already. So that kind of a pause to break out of the bad autopilot is another good method, a down-to-earth method. Just, hey, if I'm not feeling joy, stop. Reflect. Remember, if you don't feel good, it's a misunderstanding. And why is it a misunderstanding? It's a misunderstanding because it doesn't help to feel bad. Let's assume that you feel bad because something caused it. You might not know exactly what caused it. You might have a general idea of what caused it. Yeah, when you think about it, it's you feeling like you haven't been doing a really good job and you could get fired or just stay in this dead-end job forever. That's why you feel bad. Okay. So whatever the reason might be, feeling bad doesn't solve it. That's why it's a misunderstanding. That's why it's a misunderstanding. It's because giving in to wallowing in the negativity is the misunderstanding. Understanding is, I had a bad feeling. I am having a bad feeling. I don't feel good. It's not physical. It's emotional. I'm not happy. Okay. That's an alarm clock. It's calling my attention so I can fix something. Now let's get on to the fixing of it. Thank you, alarm clock. Thank you for making me feel bad, but I don't have to keep feeling bad. In fact, it'll get in the way of solving the thing that made me feel bad. So how do I solve it? And then you can move forth with energy, and at least I'm trying to do something positive about it. That's much better than just wallowing in it and accepting it as my fate to be miserable. I don't accept that. Another method.
Yeah. I always say like worry is wasted energy. And, it's the same as wallowing or feeling like kind of down and upset, right? Yes, those emotions are all valid. But as you've said, like it's stop, reflect. This is a misunderstanding. And I think that's powerful, right? For anybody listening, when they feel those emotions, to try and grasp or remember that the way you're feeling is okay and it's valid, but when you look at it with a lens that it is a misunderstanding, then that allows you to dig a little deeper as to like, well, what are you misunderstanding about this feeling? What is this feeling actually telling you? And you talked about there's two different versions of autopilot. And I know for me, I've definitely experienced both. And even just, in the last 5 years, becoming much more spiritually, awakened and aware. I kind of think about, oh my goodness, like how much of my life was I like sleepwalking through? And I'm like, thank goodness, like this happened to me at 30 and not, 70, right? But I have an awareness that I was probably on autopilot. But I also have that I also understand what it feels like now to be on autopilot in the flow state as well. In even just doing this, it's happening effortlessly, and it's the same with my writing. We write and it comes out effortlessly and it's just flowing. And I think, as you said, there's a difference. And in that first state of autopilot, you don't even have the awareness that you're in autopilot, which I think you've said is the challenge and the issue, right?
It is. It is that we're so immersed in the way life has taught us to be that we've contracted, and we're in a dark tunnel, and we're not aware of a lot of what's going on. But going back to synchronicity for a moment, the the synchronicity includes things like you're in a meeting and something that you want to say is coming up in your mind, and you want to say it, and you begin to say it, and somebody talks over you, and then you wait again, and there's another seeming moment where you could jump in, and you try to jump in again, and again somebody else talks over you. That's a signal from the universe. It isn't time to say it yet. Don't keep trying to jump in. I've noticed that. It works well. Stop trying to jump in at those moments. Also, when I'm driving, a bird flies in front of my car. They only do that when I'm going too fast. It only happens to me every day. Every day that I'm driving, if I'm going too fast, I know it because there's a bird flying in front of the car. They never do it except when I'm going too fast. Now, you can't tell me that's a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, animals and nature, I think, are like huge signs from, the universe in terms of whether it be like a loved one or whether it be, you know, you call angels, spirits, guidance from above. Definitely, it's huge. You can talk about like the robins or the robins that are like sitting out the front, and like when you're cooking, or I think even just I think animals a lot, but also nature as well, just in terms of like the trees and and the leaves and like foliage and all this kind of stuff. I think it the universe, these are all living things as well. Like these all have, I'm not saying I go and hug trees, right? I'm not at that extreme, but they all have like a consciousness, right? Like the trees are alive. Like I don't think anybody would argue that with me, but the trees are alive, the birds are alive. Like everything in our universe here has like it has consciousness of some sort. So I don't believe anything happens by coincidence. And the fact that that message or that animal is right there to tell you to slow down is not, for me, it's not a coincidence.
Remember, we were having lunch, and um, I I was making some point, and I put my finger in the air, and a dragonfly landed on it.
Mhm. I literally have anytime I see like an animal, and again, it's the whole point you said, like what drew my awareness to this, why did I notice that, right? So it's almost like the dragonfly, or a butterfly or a bird, whatever it is. When I notice those things, I almost, on my phone, I'm like, what is the spiritual meaning of a dragonfly, or a spiritual meaning of the bird? And yeah, I think there's obviously all sorts of kind of different scenarios, or kind of reasoning online and on the internet, but I think deep down you almost know what it's a sign for. I don't think you necessarily need to go online and check. I think deep down somewhere within you, you know what it's a sign for. And for instance, the bird with you, like, that is slowing you down, that same bird might not bring the same message to somebody else. It might mean something else, but you interpret it through your own lens, and I think that message is meant for you, so the way you interpret it is right for you.
I agree. Now, to some listeners, viewers, this may sound woo-woo, the latest term for poppycock.
Yeah.
Um, the the scientific aspect of this is consciousness, which science has been dodgy about, for centuries. They weren't able to get a quick win on consciousness, so they worked on other things like motion and thermodynamics and astronomy, and very small particles that you could see through certain kinds of advanced technologies. All of those were areas where it was easy. Consciousness is, they now call it the hard problem,
Mm.
but they don't say that it doesn't exist. We all know it exists. It's the only thing we can say for sure that exists, because we all have it. So, it's self-evident. So it isn't unscientific to postulate the possibility that the whole universe is consciousness. And if the whole universe is consciousness, then this isn't poppycock or woo-woo. It's consciousness communicating with itself. It doesn't necessarily have to stop within our own body. That we can only communicate with ourselves, or we can by verbally communicating or making semaphore signals. But it could also be consciousness direct signaling, telepathy, whatever you want to call it. And it may be um, inspiration, information from above, as we think of it, is telepathy from another part of the one universe. So we're not talking about stuff that is just like supernatural, superstitious kind of stuff. First of all, we're experiencing it, so we know we're experiencing something. These events are happening. They defy being dismissed as coincidence, because they happen too often. It's too far-fetched to assume that this amount of coincidence is happening in life. So there's something to it. And the question is, therefore, what should we do about it? How should we change our modes of thinking and of living to, if there's room to benefit from these communiques from the universe, to be able to receive them and use them? A common example of synchronicity is the dreams that we have, because they do relate to stuff that's happening in our waking life. They're clues, and decoding the dream and understanding what it's drawing your attention to and what its general direction of advice is something that we can all do. It's best to do that very first thing after the dream. Like if you wake up in the middle of the night from a dream, before you go back to sleep, just ponder for a moment how that dream might relate to your current life and see where it fits in. Then go back to sleep and sleep for the rest of the night. But when you wake up in the morning, remember that that was that lesson that came in overnight. And perhaps, while taking the morning shower, continue to contemplate what else there might be in the message. That's all part of synchronicity.
Yeah, I think that was good to bring up dreams actually, because I feel that because we are all, or many of us are on this autopilot, not necessarily the good kind, not the flow state, but in this autopilot so much throughout our waking hours, whether we're get up, the second we get up, we're scrolling our phones, or perhaps you have young kids and you have to get them ready for school, and then you're off rushing off to work, and then your day is, you're in meetings, and then you're stuck in traffic, and then dinner, and everybody's got busy and chaotic lives. And I think so much of the synchronicities do come through in your dream state, because it's almost the only time that you are going to be receptive to these kind of messages, really. So I think it's really important for people to, if they can't notice it in their waking hours, to take note of it through their dreams, because sometimes that's the only time that it can come through for people to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm.
The people that can benefit the most from pondering the things that we discuss on this show are the ones who need it the most, and who find it the most difficult to spend 10 minutes a day all by themselves alone with a blank mind, not purposely thinking about anything, just watching what their mind does. 5 minutes a day. I mean, when you're in that rushing, turbulent, and unsatisfied state, that robotic behavior all the time, and you're not enjoying it, even 5 minutes can make an enormous difference. Just looking inside and checking out what it's focused on. And you may find that it's not focused on anything. It's just jumping from one thing to another. It's all free association. And often it's negative daydreaming, dreaming about, somebody trying to mug you or whatever it might be. It's good to know that it's going on and to make conscious recognition of it, rather than just have it go on all the time. And you don't even notice that it's going on, even though it's inside of you. It's the most intimate companion you have. It's you, and you're not paying attention to it. You're just trying to cope with the demands and the emails and the this, that, and the other.
Yeah, and I think that's where, your earlier advice around like pause, reflect, and it's a misunderstanding is quite powerful, right? And for people to find 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever they can manage in their waking hours. I guess for people that maybe I say, I'm just almost preempting the challenges or the responses we might get to saying like create 5 or 10 minutes in your day. And people, I'm almost imagining, be like, I'm so busy, I don't have time. I guess maybe, Bill, you could share some of the benefits that people will get from taking this time for themselves.
Well, the best opportunity I think that we all have, other than the one you were talking about in terms of sleeping and dreaming, is when we go to the bathroom. There's 5 minutes, whatever it might be, in which we have no organized procedure other than what we're doing for a physical body. But we could also use that time for our mental body, and use that time to check in on what's going on in there. What have I been thinking about? And there'll be synchronicities in what you've been thinking about. Coming back to synchronicity for a second, I've got this word noia that I use. It's the opposite of paranoia. Paranoia is the suspicion that somebody's out to get you. Noia is the suspicion that somebody's out to help you. So when you notice something, you could also think about, what is the universe trying to tell me by having me notice that? Is there a positive message, a solution in there somewhere? And you can't actually do too much of that. I've noticed that if I keep a noic attitude, I'm really like in tune. I'm in the Tao. I'm in the flow with other things because I'm respecting everything else that I experience that doesn't seem to be part of me, which is part of me anyway, because we're part of it and it's part of us and it's all one thing. But it seems to be not part of my body, but I'm treating it as if it's part of me. And therefore it's on my side and it's trying to give me helpful clues. So I'm always looking for them. And therefore I see them frequently. I pick up on things like that person needs my help, or this person has a message for me but can't articulate it. What do their eyes tell me? And so on and so forth. You become more observant to the extent that you're noic, and the synchronicities will be more apparent that way too.
Yeah, I agree. And knowing from just my own lens and experiencing that, when you start to see these things, it when you start to see these things, you can't unsee them. It's almost like it's so obvious. It's like smacking you in the face. It's but I think what you've said there, it leans into when we spoke about, everything's happening for you, not to you, and having that reframe as well. It's like, I believe that we're divinely guided and that we'll never be, even if it feels uncomfortable in the time or the moment, we'll never be guided somewhere that we're not meant to be. And we might have to be there and it's maybe not a pleasant experience or a nice experience, but so much of our learning actually happens through pain or suffering, and not that I want anybody to suffer, but a lot of, if people listening think back to their life and where have you learned the biggest lessons, it's probably through some kind of challenge or something that you've had to overcome, and on the other side of that you have grown as a result of that. So I truly believe, it's great when you're guided into amazing things that feel really good for your soul, but and of course everybody wants more of that, but if you never felt the bad, how would you know it was good? It's that whole piece. And I do think, even if there's something that you're deeming not enjoyable or not a nice experience, I always believe it's for your highest and best. And I always say, like, growth doesn't care about your feelings. And it is that, right? Even when it is difficult, when you're growing, like, the universe will strip things from your environment, and that process can be painful as well. So I think, in terms of synchronicity, and linking that with your experience of just life, I guess it's yes, okay, this might be challenging or it might be hard, but how can you view it as, like, this is a growth opportunity?
The benefits that you can bring yourself just by maintaining a positive attitude, you're looking for growth opportunities. So when something is painful, something isn't going the way you would have liked, you see that as an opportunity for learning. Okay, so this isn't working out this way. So I'm going to learn how to make it work out. That's going to be the benefit of this experience. So bring it on. Let's continue this process. It's hurting me. It's hurting my feelings, but I'm going to be a stronger person when this is over. And in order to have the courage to do that, you have to love and trust yourself. And too much of the robot is conditioned to feel insecure and inadequate. And so the bad autopilot is bad autopilot whose morale is in the dumps, who doesn't have self-love or self-belief or self-trust. It's quite the opposite. It's, you know, we without even realizing it, when you're in that state of mind, you punish yourself. I mean, some people actually cut themselves. I mean, it becomes, when it gets to the psychotic point, then it's pretty obvious that they're punishing themselves on purpose. You know, they kill themselves. Um, so, in order to reach the part of yourself that has the strength to overcome all these years of habitual self-loathing, those moments of meditation, you asked before, what is the benefit of those 5 minutes or 10 minutes? What are people going to get out of it? And I don't think I gave you a whole answer. But here's the rest of it: is you get to see and eventually love who you are. You know, another way of doing it that people have used, uh, going back thousands of years, but even, you know, in the present, is psychedelic drugs. So one of the most common experiences reported by, remember the Harvard professors in the 1960s, Timothy Leary, Richard Alpert, who became Ram Dass, changed his name. They were doing the original academic experiments with LSD, and they did it under positive setting and set conditions where it wasn't likely to turn into a bad trip. And what people experienced commonly in large numbers was they saw that there was a series of roles that they played, that they identified themselves with the roles that they played. Okay, I'm a father. Okay, I'm a husband. Okay, I'm on the ball team. Okay, I'm in this department, in this company. All the different roles, but not who am I really? Underneath all those roles, there must be something else, or is there nothing, just a black hole? I mean, that's a common experience brought on by lysergic acid diethylamide, or without any drugs at all, by meditation. You get to the same place. You get there rapidly with chemicals, but it may overwhelm you, and you may not get as much benefit as you get out of doing it in a more leisurely way with meditation. But you find out who that real self is, and therefore you find out what your purpose is in life. And when you get to the spiritual level of flow state, which is accessible through meditation, you sense that there is a loving, benevolent universe that you're part of, and that it has your best interest. It loves you. And what we're saying about the scientific possibility that consciousness is all that exists implies one consciousness, of course, has self-love. I mean, I'm proclaiming that everyone has a right to feel and should feel self-love, not to the point of narcissism and, you know, treating everybody else as if they're dirt, but inclusively, you know, loving them as well. But if the universe is one thing, that it would explain why it's benevolent to its parts, us, because, I mean, we don't purposely hurt our finger. Why would the universe purposely hurt any one of us? So if we are going through pain, it must be for learning. If the universe is made of consciousness. If the universe is made of consciousness, a lot of things become more obvious and understandable. Like this awe that we have of, or you use the word divine. You know, what does it actually mean? It means something that's just truly awesome, awe-inspiring, something so big and great that all we can do in relation to it is to worship it, because it's so much greater than we are. So that's not necessarily an unscientific thought. Spirituality is not necessarily unscientific. It all fits together if we're all one consciousness. which, of course, is my answer to what is reality.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting as you were talking about awe then, it provoked this thought in me, because I actually have an astrophysicist friend who is very scientific, but she's also a coach as well. And she talked to me about, nature, and she's got this thing about awe, right? So, when there is, when there's an eclipse, or when, a volcano erupts, or, I don't know, you see a tide go out at night, or whatever it is, or waves crashing down. She talked to me about awe, and this concept that, the reason she loves nature and the planets and all this kind of stuff is because in that moment, all the all that us humans can do is just sit back and watch, and it actually unites. So say for instance she went to see the eclipse, and in that moment all anybody could do was focus and be present, and they were in awe of, the beauty of our universe. And with that, it kind of brings people together in those moments of awe. And when she said this to me, it resonated, like yeah, it was kind of mind shattering for me, because I never had thought about it like that. But it's even as simple as like watching a sunset. People go, wow, did you see that sunset? And it is in those moments of awe that we come together, and unite, really, rather than, all the division, or not even division, but just being on autopilot the whole time.
The spiritual feeling is connectedness. If we feel connected to everything, that is a spiritual feeling. And it's something that we've all felt from time to time. And when we're patriotic, that's a connectedness feeling too. It's on some level spiritual. And love is spiritual. That's a feeling of connectedness. Well, all of these love and connectedness feelings are spiritual. But we've narrowed, well, the popular notion of what spirituality is. Well, it's organized religion with these priests who have been doing sexual things with young boys and girls and have gotten us into wars. And there was the Inquisition. And so whenever we think about spirituality, it's all muddied up with, the mistakes that have been made by human beings that they associate with spirituality. But that's only the mistakes that have been made by people who have taken up a spiritual career. That isn't the same as every human being has spiritual experiences all the time, just doesn't maybe put that label on it. But when they do something for somebody else unselfishly, just because it feels the right thing to do, it makes them feel good to do a good thing. Those are all spiritual moments.
Yeah, the spiritual moments or synchronicities are all around us constantly. And I think it's about being able to be in the right mindset, or you have the right, not even the right lens, that's not the right terminology, but having a lens in which you can actually view them and experience them and see them. And if people are able to do that through creating, one, more self-awareness, or two, more self-love, and yeah, just time for them, what do you think the outcome will be if more people were aware of the synchronicities that were happening around them every single day?
Well, we'll get to utopia much quicker. I mean, we see all around us evidence that wellness, mental, emotional, as well as physical wellness, is becoming major theme of the future and the present. As you know, I'm planning this series of workshops to speak to business leaders about creating high performance teams and communicating their marketing messages in a more altruistic, inclusive way, and making their employees partners in the adventure of the organization. And I'm not the only one. You know, there's been, since the 1960s, 1970s, and it goes back earlier than that, there's been a human development movement, and it was called the New Age. Nowadays, it's just called wokeness, and it's become a negative thing. Now it's being used, you know, it's so easy to make something into a scapegoat nowadays because there's such relativism, nihilism, and cynicism that young people, the first thing they think of is a snide remark. You can never go wrong by making a snide remark. You'll always be cool if you make a snide remark. If you say something that's even slightly idealistic or positive, then you'll get, you know, people jumping on you and calling you crazy or woke or whatever. And so there is, you know, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as we move toward this awakened culture that you and I represent the opportunity for, and millions of us do, there's also millions of us who are fighting it and calling it stupid and woo-woo, and, you know, we'll get past it, but that's the meaning of the moment. You know, we're trying to make it a better life, and we will make it a better life, because in the end, everybody wants it to be a better life. We're going to have to, you know, deal with the cynicism and skepticism, at least for another 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But what's 30 years?
That's it. I do think that it's a lot. Well, I feel that now with, you know, social media and the internet, I do feel that it is much more widely talked about, much more widely accepted. And again, because you have these beliefs or see these things, right? So for anybody listening, just because you notice synchronicities or notice messages, it doesn't make you crazy. Like you can still be you in whatever capacity that is. And I know you said when, you know, when people ask them who they are, or they say their job title, or they'll say they're a mom or a dad, right? But and I think this is a powerful question. It's like, no, but who are you? It's not like, what do you do? Who are you? And I think that question will prompt reflection. And that being said, you can have all these, you can notice these synchronicities, you can notice the messages from the universe, but still be you, right? So, and when I say, who are you? You know, you could be this loving, caring, empathetic, you know, smart, intelligent, passionate person. You can be all these things and notice synchronicities from the universe and feel that a robin is a message, or a bird flying in front of your car is a sign for you to slow down. You can have these, see these messages and still be you. It doesn't mean you're crazy or crackers or woo-woo or whatever the label is. I think the real question is, who are you? Because you're always that person, regardless of what you see or believe.
That's the really important question is, who are you and what are you here for? What's your mission? What's your purpose? And there is purpose in life. The whole universe has a purpose. And you have a purpose. And one clue to your purpose is your gifts, the things that you're good at and you love doing. That's the major clue to what your mission is, the gifts that you have to give others. And that's something that'll come out of the 5 minutes a day or whatever that you take.
Yeah. Who are you? What are you here to do? And what are your gifts?
Yes.
So I think with that, that's a great place for us to wrap up for today. So thank you, everybody, for listening to us talk all about synchronicities. And thank you, Bill, for another fabulous episode that just flows off the tongue. So we hope that you have enjoyed and learned something today, and keep an eye out for birds flying in front of your car.
See you next time.
See you next time.